welcome back to Between Two Priests. And this is the second week in a row that we've had a guest with us, so we're grateful for that. And we are still welcoming your questions and your thoughts about what we can discuss on our show on Wednesday nights. But we're glad to have you here. I'm Pastor Terry Peterson from St. John's in Elkhart, and Father Joshua is here from St. David's in Elkhart, and he's going to introduce our special guest.
Well, today we're joined by Lindsey Marks, who's a good friend of mine. We went, her husband and I, and she all went to undergrad together at Lee University, and she is really involved in the Enneagram and connecting it with spirituality and music, and I thought it would be a fun topic for our conversation tonight. So welcome, Lindsey.
Hi, thank you for having me. I'm very excited.
So we kind of discussed an agenda beforehand. I'm sure Terry and I will have some questions that pop up, but I'll kind of just hand it over to you now.
Awesome. Well, so a little bit about me. I live in Michigan in Battle Creek with my husband, and I have 3 kids. And we encountered the Enneagram wisdom about maybe 5 years ago. And just the process of using this tool to grow in awareness of ourselves, to grow in compassion for ourselves, to grow in empathy for others. It's just radically changed our outlook and our marriage and the way we parent and the way we just do life in general. And so I know there may be some people who aren't familiar with what it is. So I thought I'd start with just a general overview about what this tool is. And there's a lot that can be said. So I want you to know that we're just sort of maybe reaching for the tip of the iceberg. I don't even know if we'll touch the tip of the iceberg because there is so much that can be done. And I think we all know that spirituality and self-awareness, transformation, we could say, is just a lifelong journey. So if you're new to the Enneagram, welcome to the first baby step in a very, very lifelong journey. And it's wonderful. It's an adventure. So the Enneagram is an ancient tool. There are lots of ways of using the Enneagram. We in the West have just, in the 20th century, used it as like a personality resource and a personality tool. And we have several people to thank for that, several grandmothers and grandfathers in this Enneagram of personality tradition. But it has been a progression. And so there are a lot of streams of it, a lot of ways that people have taken this ancient wisdom and then sort of said, okay, well, what can I bring to this and what can I add to it? So the tool that we have now is largely influenced by like Western psychology and Western ways of thinking. So there are a lot of streams in this, and the particular stream of the Enneagram that I have been drawn to is one that takes and combines it with Ignatian spiritual practices. When I first encountered the tool, I was like, this is great. I've got all this information downloaded in my mind. How do I implement it, in my day-to-day life? How do I sort of pray the Enneagram, I guess, was one question I was asking myself. And so my mentors and pastors are Scott and Claire Lowridge, and they have written several books on the Enneagram, and they trained me in this particular approach, which is called the approach of the harmony triads. So I'm going to talk more about what that means. But so for those of you who are brand new to the Enneagram, I'll just briefly explain the 9 types. And you guys just feel free to stop me if you have any questions or, you want to input when I get to your type and you want to say, hey, can I say something about that?
I will kind of jump ahead here and say I was first introduced to the Enneagram when I was doing my hospital chaplaincy for CPE in Knoxville, Tennessee. And I will say, so I kind of looked at the different types and a brief summary of them, and then was encouraged to take the actual long pay test. And when I got my results, I was angry because I didn't think that's what I was. And then the deeper I delved into it and the more I live with it, the more I'm like, oh yeah, I'm totally that.
Yeah, I think that's why it's such a great tool for transformation, because it makes us have to go to that shadow part of ourselves, that part that we're just really uncomfortable facing. And I'm grateful that we can face it with the Spirit of God. You know, we can go there and we can have grace and compassion as we look at those things. So, yeah, I totally resonate with your experience. I think I cried when I got my results.
I remember saying, no, that's not right. And everybody else in the room said, are you sure about that?
Yeah, for sure. So we'll just start with, I like to start with type 8, and I'm going to talk about the 3 gut types first. So one thing to sort of lay the groundwork here is that there are 3 centers of intelligence that these 9 types reside in: the head center, the heart center, and the gut or the instinct center. So I'm going to start with the gut types first. So type 8 is often called the challenger. And so type 8s, they speak their mind. They're led by their instincts. You know, they're the types of people that kind of just know something in their gut and then they take action right away. They're not afraid of a confrontation. And so one of the gifts that 8s really bring to the world is to be able to speak the truth and say, here's where we need some justice, and here's where we need some holy confrontation so we can work some difficult things out. And I think we especially are seeing a lot of 8 energy right now, dealing with some serious issues of injustice and race. And so those 8s, your voice is really, really important right now to speak up and say, God has a better way forward for us with justice and seeking truth. So 9's also in the gut center, and they are often called peacemakers. So also really important right now when there are a lot of tensions high. 9s seek to harmonize people. They tend to see things from, both perspectives. And so they're really comfortable living in this gray space, right? Where I can see your perspective, I can see your perspective. And so they act as great mediators. And when a 9 can show up with compassion for themselves and empathy for others, they make amazing leaders, because they can lead us forward with harmony and unity. And so, 9s, thank you for what you bring to the world. And then 1s are the last type in the gut triad, and they, 1s. So 1s tend to be a little more black and white. Yes. Yeah. So 1s tend to, they're often known as the good person or the reformer. And so they're really led by their convictions about what's right and what's wrong. And 1s are the people who are going to be living from their principles when no one is watching. They're not going to cheat. They're not going to take the shortcut. They're going to do it the right way, and expect that we do too. And so 1s are awesome for bringing us a sense of guiding principle. And I think especially when 1s are open to the voice of the Spirit of God, and that, that guiding principle is ethical and moral and speaking on behalf of what God says is good for us. It's just such a beautiful gift to the world. So thank you, Josh, for what you bring.
Thank you. 1s also have a dark side, but
oh, don't we all?
But the thing that really kind of won me over when I was diving in a little deeper to it, the explanation was given that 1 in the eternal part of themselves remember paradise when God said everything was good, and frustrated with the world now because it's not that.
Yes. Oh, that's beautiful. I love that. Yes. And so 1s, are offering a lot for us right now as far as a way forward, a path forward. How can we reform these systems, to be founded on goodness and rightness and solid principles? And so 1s are so important right now. Do you guys have anything else you want to say about that gut center before we go to the heart center? And like I said, there's so much that can be said. Terry, do you have anything you want to add?
You're muted.
I'm taking notes. I've only done the short version of the Enneagram, so I'm just kind of listening today.
Yeah, that's great. No problem. So then I want to talk about the heart-centered people. So next is 2s, 3s, and 4s, who primarily, they experience the world and their own self-expression largely through their emotions. So 2s, which is what I find to be my most dominant type, they are often known as givers, the helper, the loving person. So their focus is outward, and they often find themselves in situations where they are giving more than they are receiving. And so there can be an imbalance there, but 2s are focused. And so kindness, empathy, compassion, these are all really high on the list of things that are important to 2s. They're similar to 9s in that they want people to get along. They don't want conflict. For me, I always believe if you can get 2 people who are fighting in a room and have them share their hearts with each other, then you can resolve any conflict. Like, I truly, truly believe that. And so, yeah, 2s, the way that I see 2s really showing up right now, the way that I am sort of bringing myself to the world is checking on my neighbors. Do you need anything? Can I run to the store for you? Are you doing okay? Is your heart okay? Do you need to talk? Are you lonely? So I really see 2s showing up in that way right now, big time. And then 3s are often called achievers, or kind of the competitive person. So 3s also reside in the heart center, and they are very action oriented. So if you have a 3 in your life, you'll recognize them by their desire to get things done. They're very charismatic personalities, so they're often very charming and easy to talk to. And they can sort of blend and adapt to whatever situation they find themselves in. And they know how to it's almost like they get a strategy in their mind and they know how to make it happen, right? So 3s are so valuable to what we're experiencing right now, because a lot of us are living in a state of shock and what is happening, and things are changing faster than I can adapt. And 3s are so good at that, just kind of taking the punches and rolling with the changes and speaking up and being a voice that says, I think I have a way forward for us, and, rallying the troops and getting everybody on board. And it's just so important right now to have 3s who can be compassionate with themselves and say, okay, I'm overdoing it. I need to take a break. I need to rest and pass the baton to someone else. But then who can also say, I'm going to live in my God-given energy to be a voice for how we can move forward and adapt well right now to all these changes. So Enneagram 4s are called the individualist. They're often called the romantic, or the unique person, the artist, which I don't really love that term, because I know a lot of amazing artists who don't identify as 4s. But there are a lot of 4s who will identify themselves as artists. So that's sort of one of those stereotypes. There's a reason for it, but it's not always true. So, but 4s are very deep wells for us of insight, and 4's highest priority is to uncover the beauty that exists in the world or in other people. So 4s are always sort of looking for that transcendent thing that maybe is above what the most cliche, most obvious truth is. So fours are always kind of digging deep and also transcending. And so it makes for such a broad spectrum of a human individual, a human being, right? To be able to have those depths within them of emotion. And hi, can you talk to Daddy about it right now? Thank you. Okay, shut the door. Please, shut the door. Thanks. So yes, fours, I find them showing up right now in such a beautiful way, because fours are comfortable sitting with pain, and they're often more comfortable exploring pain than joy. And so that, is one way that fours can grow, and that is a path of transformation forward for them. But man, do we need people who are okay with just saying, this is hard and this is painful, and we're just going to sit in that, and we're going to grieve, and we're going to lament, and we're not going to rush through that process. We want to let the Spirit do what can only be done in us by grieving and lamenting. And
whereas the one wants to fix it.
Mm-hmm.
The four knows that's going to take time. I wanted to be a four. Realized I was a one.
Yeah. So, well, I mean, and I'll say this in a moment, but I'll mention it now. Those harmony triads, the way that they work with the head and the heart and the gut is that, a four is in the heart center, but we want to be aligned with the other centers. So a four in the heart center needs a one in their gut, needs a 7 in the head center, which we'll get to in a minute. But, a four needs you, and you need a 4 to help each other stay healthy and transforming and not get stuck in your type. So, yeah. Any thoughts on heart center?
I know friends that are fours, and because of that they're comfortable sitting in that place, in that grief place, in that dark place. It is also very easy for them to slip in and stay in depression.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
So I think that's what you're going to get to with the harmony triads, but it's just that you have to be aware of those within your.
Absolutely. Yes. Thanks for saying that. Yep. And we all have ways of getting stuck in our type. So what I'm hoping that we can take from this is just the beginning of a path forward, some things to think about. So then in the head center, we have 5s, 6s, and 7s. And what we mean when we say head center is that these people primarily take in information, process information, and then put it back out through rationale, reason, data, research, logic, planning. So for 5s, what that looks like is 5s are called the observer, and 5s can be some of the it's like, when you hear people who they say their brain is like a steel trap, 5s can often be described that way because their ability to just absorb information and relay information is just astounding. It's brilliant. And so 5s are able to observe without being overly attached to something. They can sort of detach, and that is a gift. And again, it can be a problem. A 5 too attached to emotion can be hard, but for me as a 2, 5 is in my harmony triad. That's my headspace. So when I need harmony and I need alignment, and I'm like, I am all in my feelings right now. How can I listen to the 5 space and detach emotionally from this and think logically for a moment, or ask more questions, be curious about what's really going on here, So that's what 5s are offering to us so beautifully right now is their ability to suss out data and look at variety of data and to be able to relay that information and ask really good questions without getting too bogged down about needing to act right away and also needing to feel everything to the bottom. Like they're just really offering us a lot of really good questions and curiosity and a way of being that allows us to look at the data. And I love that about fives. Sixes are known as the loyalist, the loyal person, most often. And sixes also in the head, they are often preoccupied with worst case scenarios, which is such a gift, right? Because it's, when I was training for the Enneagram, we joked that if there's ever a zombie apocalypse, like a 6 is going to get you through it because they've already laid out a path for how you're going to survive that.
And then the pandemic hit, and we were all like,
and then the pandemic hit, and we're like, all the 6s are prepared, right? Like they're the ones that, have already thought through like the worst case scenarios and how they're going to respond and how they're going to handle it. And so 6s are super curious, ask great questions. And 6s are really loyal friends. 6s can have trouble trusting at first, but once you've earned the trust of a 6, you've got it for life. I mean, they will be loyal to the death. And so some of my closest friends are 6s. Some of them, Joshua. And so what 6s are really offering us right now is a lot of that strategy, and yet still, similar to the 5s, not getting too bogged down with emotions, but curiously lifting these questions for us, and also planning how are we going to avoid this in the future, right? What are we going to do differently? And so that's great. And 7s, the last type that resides primarily processes through the head center is often called the joyful person, the adventure seeker, the opportunist. So 7s really orient themselves around planning the next thing that is going to feel adventurous or exciting or relieve them of boredom or help them avoid their pain, help them outrun something that might be difficult for them to look in the face. But 7s are often great storytellers. They're the people that you want on a road trip with you. They're going to be spontaneous, and they're going to be able to offer you a lot of levity in your relationships. So 7s are, offering us a way to continue to find joy, even though we are experiencing a lot of pain right now, in multiple ways. And 7s, when they are really connected to themselves, and God, they know how to be with pain, but they know how to not get stuck in pain, and they know how to swim the depths, come up for air, and go parasailing when they find that harmony. So those are the 9 types briefly. And what we want is a path of transformation. So the path of transformation for aligning the head, the heart, and gut for like a type 8 is with 2s and 5s, right? So 2s, 5s, and 8s help bring harmony to one another. So, you're going to be making generous offerings, but using wisdom and making sure it's not going to tap you out. And then also being able to take action in a 2-5-8 harmony triad. A 1-4-7 harmony triad is going to look like a person who knows how to sit with grief and lament and not hurry people through it so we can get back to having fun, but also can know I'm getting stuck. I need to lift my eyes. I need to find joy and find gratitude in the things that lift my spirits and lift my heart. And also be able to take positive action and move their lives forward and reform themselves, reform the systems they're involved with, without too much heaviness and also without just fun all the time, finding that balance and that harmony. And then a 3-6-9 harmony triad looks like loyalty, meeting peace, and meeting action. So a person who is in that 3-6-9 triad is going to be someone who can look at all perspectives, but also not get stuck saying, don't make me choose. Like, they're also going to be able to access that 3 energy that says, let's achieve something together while we are being loyal to each other and asking the deep questions and staying curious. So those are the 3 harmony triads in brief. And I do have some ideas for some spiritual practices.
I've got a, just so it helps for those visual learners.
Yeah.
I'll bring it up on the screen. That
Yes.
is kind of how it's laid out.
Yeah.
So we have our 1, 7, you said 1, 7, and 4?
Yep. So this diagram is just a little bit different than the one that I operate in. But this one is helpful too in different models and different systems. So if you just kind of switch the arrows at the bottom at 4 and 5, or switch the points at the bottom, 4 and 5, then you've got the harmony triangles. So 2, 5, 8, 1, 4, 7, 3, 6, 9.
So there are different ways that people sort of apply the information that they learn from this. From this, you have a different sort of map that you use, so you apply them differently.
Yeah. There are a lot of different ways of exploring the information of the Enneagram. And, it's really unrealistic to say that there are only 9 types of people, right? That just doesn't make sense to our life experience. But there are a lot of, so if I say that, 1 is red, how many shades of red do we have, So it's kind of like that. It's like there's different ways of coloring your personality in different ways, that your life experiences affect you, that your upbringing affects you, that your trauma affects you. So, it's by no means only 9 types and that's it. There is so much room for variation.
And the point is to not stay stuck, right?
Yes.
And stagnant, because it's about growth, spiritual, physical, mental, emotional, and requires movement throughout different types.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And I love the word transformation, because it's this ongoing process that just takes time. And there are a lot of approaches to the Enneagram that just offer you, I think this is what we're really seeing right now with it. There's sort of an oversaturation in pop culture with the Enneagram. So you see a lot of memes, coffee mugs, t-shirts, phone cases, to people getting tattoos. And I think that there is space for all of that to kind of, give us some humor around the Enneagram that we need. I even saw the other day, someone's making coffee beans for each of the Enneagram types, it's a fun idea, right? Does it lead to transformation? It doesn't. You're not going to transform by drinking those coffee beans. So,
I just get a little more awake, but that's it.
Yeah, a little more awake. Maybe you can tackle your personality a little better that day. I don't know. But so I think we do have to be really careful that when we use this tool, we are not wrapped, because we want to know ourselves. We want to know. And I think that is the Spirit of God leading us to know ourselves. Because in the process of growing in self-awareness and transformation, we get better pictures of God. We get to know God better too. And so I do feel that the Spirit is leading us, and we just have to be careful that we don't grab on to a number and tattoo it on our arm and say, this is who I am, and then go so deep in that we actually find ourselves stuck. Yeah. So a few, let's start with the gut again, since we went all the way around the circle. There are a few practices that I find really helpful for each center to begin aligning and engaging the other centers and sort of bringing them forward. So because 8s, 9s, and 1s tend to consult their gut before their heart or their head, there are some spiritual practices that can help them lean into those spaces. And one is the examine. So I'm not sure if your congregations are familiar with the examine, but we do it every night with our kids, and as often as we can as a couple. So I've got a blend of, private spiritual exercises here, but also I think communal spiritual exercises are important. And a lot of these can be done privately or communally. So the examine is one that you can do on your own, or with a trusted friend or a spiritual director. We do it as a family, and it just opens up your heart to see the ways that you are connected to joy or love throughout the day, and then other emotions that maybe weren't so positive for you, and offering those things before the Lord in curiosity to say, here's what I felt today. Can you help me and guide me through those emotions? Imaginative prayer is not one for gut-centered people, where you take a passage of scripture, like say blind Bartimaeus, the story with blind Bartimaeus, and you read through the scripture and imagine yourself in the text. Who do you see yourself as in the story? How is Jesus engaging you in the story? You sort of practice letting your imagination run wild and letting God speak to you as you are curious. And then a body scan for gut-centered people, I think, is really important as an active spiritual practice to say, what am I noticing in my body? Because sometimes they just feel these things and these instincts, and they don't necessarily slow down to say, okay, what emotion is maybe being provoked in me right now? Or what do I think about what's going on with me right now? Or what is the thought that's going through my head right now that's causing my shoulders to tense up, or causing me to scowl? So I think curiosity, bringing an awareness to what is happening in the body for a gut person, and then connecting that to their emotions and their thoughts is another way to bring alignment. And I also wrote down that journaling can bring about a way of being with your thoughts and your feelings in a way that is more private, and you don't have to share that with anyone, but just regular journaling can really open up so many things that you were not aware of that you were feeling or thinking. So yeah, any thoughts on that?
I hadn't heard it put the way, but the body scan, we do that with our spiritual director every month, and just kind of, where are you right now? What do you notice? How is your breathing? Where does it hurt?
Yeah.
And that is a really big one. Where does it hurt? Because
where does it hurt?
Something else.
Yeah. Yeah. And then connecting that for the heart center, which we'll talk about next, for a heart center person to feel an emotion and then say, can you locate it in your body? Cause I can feel it and I can cry, but sometimes I don't notice how it's coming through in my body, or the patterns that are developing in my body as a result of my emotions. So yeah, I love that. Thank you for saying that. So yeah, we're in the heart now, and imaginative prayer is also really good for heart-centered people. I found it to be such a beautiful, fresh way for me to experience God, to engage my mind in that way as a heart person. Also breath prayer. I love writing breath prayers. So you're breathing in. There are a lot of different ways you can do it, but for me, what I love to do is exhale something that I want to let go of, and then inhale what I want, what I'm requesting God to do for me. So more grace or more love or more patience. I kind of, take that in, and I feel my body kind of relaxing. And a lot of times my breath prayers are around the ways that I'm stuck in my two-ness. So my breath prayer might be something like, the world will go on without my help, something like that allows me to go, I can take care of me right now. I don't have to be taking care of everyone else. Solitude and silence is really important, I think, in Heart Center, because 2s, 3s, and 4s are so driven by the need for affirmation, external affirmation, that when you put a 2 or 3 or 4 in solitude and silence, there's no one to perform for. There's no one who can affirm you. You just have to learn to be with yourself and be compassionate toward yourself. And so solitude and silence is great. And like, as I mentioned before, emotionally identifying, maybe getting, they have these wheels that show emotional vocabulary words that kind of help you get away from happy, sad, angry, afraid, and give you a broader vocabulary. So for a heart-centered person who maybe does need to get more comfortable expressing, their emotions, and then finding out, how is this showing up in my body? And what is the internal dialogue that is causing me to have this emotion? Or what is the approval that I'm looking for? Or the thing that I'm, asking these questions, being curious. What is it that I'm after that's causing my heart to seize up around this right now? Give a pause if anyone wants to say anything there.
Tara, do you have anything?
Yeah, I was going to say that the breathing prayer, the breath prayer, is one that I used to use in a Wednesday evening confirmation class. Like they'd come from school or from sports or from whatever, and we would do that. And not having studied any of this, but it gave a place for teenagers who are at that point in their life probably very emotional, but they don't want to show it, right? It's there, but they don't want others to know. It gave them the chance to sort of let go of those emotions of the day, so that they could be present in the evening. And although there'd be a lot of giggling and, this is, what are we, the negative thing or whatever, but we did it a lot anyway.
Yeah, I love that. That's so great. And yeah, when you're teaching spiritual practices to kids or to adults who are still emotionally maturing, it's never going to be like this really beautiful, euphoric spiritual experience. It's like so messy sometimes, right? But man, the tools that you're giving them, that's amazing. Thank you for doing that. It's great. So, are we ready for the head?
We're never ready for the head, but yeah, sure.
Okay, so again, for head center people, the examine is wonderful because it allows you to recall the events of your day, which is often really natural for head center people, but also to drop down into the heart and really explore what emotions lifted that day and holding those things before the Lord. Breath prayer, as we said, because that really helps a head person drop down into their body and find that groundedness that often is missing, and to really feel their body. And a lot of times, I've noticed that head-centered people often go deep into the head because their body is a really uncomfortable place for them to be. So sometimes when you're practicing these things and you're exploring, like, what does it feel like to be with my body and to really just be with myself compassionately? Sometimes grief can come up at the ways that you haven't been able to be present with your body, whether it's because of trauma or abuse or body shame, or, I mean, so many reasons. But so I just want to say, as you engage all of this, like, just have so much grace and compassion for yourself, and know that God is with you in those moments. Because that, you know, that can be one of the hardest things, is when people start going into a center that they're not comfortable with. It's like very disorienting at first. Does that make sense?
And particularly with the body bit, you don't always necessarily plan on it. I will say, prior to quarantine, I was going to get a massage just about every month. Just kind of made that part of my regular practice. And a lot of stuff happened in the last 6 months. And there was one a few months ago, obviously before March, but a few months ago, had my massage. And as soon as my massage therapist finished and walked out of the room, I started crying. And it was just because the body had finally released everything. And I'd let it release everything. So you don't always plan on these. I know for myself, and I know people that have practiced the silence and solitude and been very surprised at what comes out of it. So, so be gentle with yourself whenever you're trying a new spiritual practice.
Yes, I resonate with that experience so much. I also said that just the act of walking for head-centered people, if you feel like, oh my gosh, like the examines, it's like, you know, it feels like too much sometimes for people, too many new things. And so taking a walk sometimes is the easiest, most accessible way to just start grounding and being in your body. And on that walk, not taking your phone, not putting in earbuds to listen to music, but just walking, noticing what your body feels like when you're walking, noticing what your surroundings are, you know, being present to that moment, can be just such a simple and yet really powerful way to ground down and to be with your body. Journaling, again, for head-centered people, is a way to get in touch with those emotions that you may experience, like a flick, and move on from it, just to be with those emotions and be curious about them. It's also a good way for head people to increase their emotional vocabulary, like I mentioned before. And a body scan for a head person is a great way to ask yourself, like, how are my fears manifesting in my body? And how can I relax from those fears? How can I stop constricting around my fear and learn to open up my hands and let God be with me in this fear, and place this worry or this anxiety in God's hands. So, yeah, I think that's kind of the end of what I have prepared. So,
well, thank you so much.
Yeah.
I never would have been able to do that by myself. You have anything, Terry?
Yeah, just a lot to think about. And I feel like sort of schizophrenic, because sometimes as you were talking, I sort of identify with a little bit of everything out of these. So doing the whole process would probably put me in a what? Like you guys are talking about, you know.
Yeah.
Do identify with, or want to identify maybe with, some of the things.
Yeah. And everybody has a head, heart, and gut, right? We all have it. So it's really normal to see yourself in a lot of different numbers. And when I'm coaching people or leading workshops, I always like to say, the most important thing is not, what is my number? I have to find my number, and then I have to learn everything I can about my number. The most important thing is that you're waking up to yourself in a way that maybe you've been asleep for a very long time. And so the number is not as important as the process. You know, a lot of people land on a number really early on, and then years later, they're like, I'm getting to deeper levels of awareness, and I realized that that was never really my type. That was just kind of how I was functioning because of A, B, and C. So I do want to caution that. I think that, this is a great tool, but the most important thing is your process and your journey, grace for yourself, compassion for yourself, empathy for others. That's the most important thing to me. And I do have a couple of resources that I wanted to share also, if people are wanting to dig deeper. So this is a very small book, and it's a good place to start if you just want to read about the different styles. This is a good primer. It's by Dr. Jerome Wagner. And the test that he offers is WEPSS.com. So that is one. Yeah, that is one test that you could take. Another one is the Riso-Hudson test, which is RHETI.com. Both are good tests and very reasonably priced. So that's a good primer if you're just getting started. And this is called Spiritual Rhythms for the Enneagram. This just came out last year, and this is a book that my pastors wrote with Doug and Adele Calhoun, who are very prolific in the world of like spiritual practices. They have several books out on spiritual practices. So the four people combined to create this beautiful resource. And I'm telling you, it's so amazing. There are so many resources and prayers. And I could go on and on about this book, but it focuses around the harmony triads. That's why you see the triangles there on the front. So this is a great one for harmonizing for spiritual practices. I love that book. And then this one just came out last week, and I'm only a third of the way through, but I'm seeing the need for this book because it's written with such emphasis on having compassion for yourself and our need to belong to ourselves and to belong to others. And I think that the COVID crisis has really lifted that truth for us, that we have to belong to ourselves and we have to belong to each other, or we're not going to survive it. So this is a great new book by Christopher Hewerts, who also wrote The Sacred Enneagram, which is another great one. So those are just a few of my suggestions. And I'm also available as a resource. You guys are free to give out my contact information to people who want some one-on-one coaching and some guidance as they start to kind of explore what's going on for them.
Wonderful.
Great. Thank you.
So you're welcome very much. Thanks for having me.
Well, before you go, and before we stop recording, I thought we'd close with prayer.
Yes.
And since we've been talking about Ignatian spirituality, I have a prayer by St. Ignatius. So let us pray. Take, Lord, receive all my liberty, my memory, my understanding, my whole will, all that I have and all that I possess. You gave it all to me, Lord. I give it all back to you. Do with it as you will, according to your good pleasure. Give me your love and your grace, for with this I have all that I need. Amen.
Amen.
Beautiful. I love that. Thank you so much, Terry, and thank you, Josh.
Thank you.